We'll come back in a minute to the anti-American demonstrations that have been around the world today, but we want to change to an important domestic story now, because in Florida today, the Centers for Disease Control and the FBI are investigating a second case of exposure to anthrax at the offices of a company which publishes tabloid newspapers. Last week, a photo editor died from the disease. Another employee has now been exposed. And ABC's Brian Ross is here. Brian?
Peter, for all the talk of quick action, co-workers of the victim say it took investigators several days to actually get to the building in Boca Raton, Florida, where the investigation is now centered. The building was closed and sealed today as a special FBI bioterrorism squad searched for clues, particularly in the building's ventilation system and in the workspace area of the dead victim. The U.S. Attorney General said nothing had been ruled out.
We don't have enough information to know whether this could be related to terrorism or not.
Both cases involve employees of American Media, the company that publishes the National Enquirer and other supermarket tabloids. The presence of anthrax spores in the nasal passage of a second employee, a 73-year-old mailroom worker, led many experts to say it was hard to call it anything but deliberate.
There's no innocent possibility here. That somebody has targeted some individuals and someone has deliberately released anthrax.
Just who and how, the big question for the FBI.
Probably at some point over the last 2 weeks, there was a delivery of agent, either through the ventilation system or possibly in a small package.
State health officials asked everyone who worked in the building and their children to report for tests and antibiotic drugs. Carla Chaddick works in the cubicle next to that of the man who died from anthrax last week.
They got to find the source of this thing. They need to find it very fast. Just to put our minds at ease, you know. We're all scared to death.
Among the FBI investigative leads, the fact that hijack ringleader Muhammad Atta had twice during August rented and flown planes out of a nearby airfield in Lantana, Florida. An airborne attack is considered highly unlikely, but authorities told ABC News tonight that the FBI has begun to conduct anthrax tests on every possession of Muhammad Atta it can find. Peter?
Thanks very much, Brian. Brian Ross on the anthrax investigation. At the White House today, the president signed an executive order creating an Office of Homeland Security. The former governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Ridge, will run it and answer to the president.
That I will bear true faith.
I've given Tom and the Office of Homeland Security a mission to design a comprehensive, coordinated national strategy to fight terror here at home.
We must detect, prepare for, prevent, protect against, respond to, and recover from terrorist attacks. An extraordinary mission, but we will carry it out.
Mr. Ridge has a huge job in his hands. He has no independent authority. He has to coordinate the efforts of 50 agencies, and he does not have a budget that he can administer as he sees fit. Well, for almost a month now, as everybody in the country knows, the U.S. has been under unusually tight security. Since this weekend, security in what is now frequently called the homeland is even tighter. Here's ABC's Dean Reynolds.
A few miles from all the wreckage and the rubble, New York City's annual Columbus Day Parade went off without a hitch. Marching down Fifth Avenue, accompanied by a larger-than-usual deployment of the city's 41,000 police officers, all now on highest possible alert.
We have extra police officers, we have National Guard. They're doing all the things they are supposed to do.
In Washington, Attorney General John Ashcroft said all Americans should be alert.
We want people to have preparations and not panic.
At Detroit's 80,000-seat Silverdome, where the Lions play the Rams tonight, there'll be a no-fly zone overhead and 25% more cops on the ground. On Lake Michigan today, Coast Guardsmen patrolled the waters off Chicago. This is one of 72 Coast Guard security zones along 88,000 miles of the nation's shoreline, now getting round-the-clock surveillance.
Stamford, Bridgeport, New Haven.
At Union Station in Washington today, no one got aboard without a picture ID. And they took the garbage cans out of the D.C. subway.
That's a nice security move right there to make sure, you know, because they can't just easily put something in the trash can.
Freight trains and trucks hauling hazardous material were upgrading safeguards, while many tunnels, dams, and bridges nationwide have bolstered surveillance, whether over the East River in New York or the Red River in North Dakota.
All customers will be allowed just one piece of carry-on baggage. And
at major airports, the lines were longer than ever, with checks on bags inside and badges outside. In Phoenix, they even check shoes and socks.
Water treatment plants, nuclear power stations, and companies that make vaccines for germ warfare are all being guarded now, too. Preparations for the unknown. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Chicago.
There was an incident on a flight today which shows how anxious people are. A young man described as deranged tried to get into the cockpit of an American Airlines jet heading from Los Angeles to Chicago. He was subdued by 12 other passengers. And Air National Guard fighters scrambled to pursue the plane. They broke the sound barrier to do so, and therefore scared people on the ground. When we continue this evening listening to Osama bin Laden's message, in many parts of the world he gets a sympathetic hearing. In the United States, solid support for attacking Afghanistan, nervousness about further attacks at home. And some of the day's other news, including disaster on the runway in Milan.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Aflac. Without it, no insurance is complete.